So, what actually is a germ? When we take a look at germs, they actually are everywhere. There's something we come in contact with every day. When we take a look at germs, most people say, ew, germs, I don't like germs, or I don't like bugs, all these gross things. In actuality, there can be a lot of good things about germs. However, today we're really only going to look at the bad germs. So, even though I'm going to make them sound all awful and yucky, if you really wanted to know and ask me questions as a science teacher, germs actually can be very beneficial too. The first thing we're going to look at how to do today, because we are going to be reading some passages independently. I'm not going to read them all to you today. All right. I want to take a moment to review how to read. As we can see, this guy in the picture saying, what the heck are we talking about? I know how to read, Mrs. Turkleson. I'm in high school. In all honesty, I know how to read too. But interestingly enough, there's a difference between when I read a book at home in bed, when I read a book to my children in their rooms, versus when I read a book as an English teacher to try to make quizzes and tests for people in the past years. All different strategies. All right. Even though many of you guys are probably listening to my voice in this Zaption video, rolling your eyes, probably doing Lord knows what to the computer screen, all right, regardless, I want you to start out by knowing the vocabulary and reading slowly until you've understood what you read, which is very different than just reading for pleasure. How do you actually know what you understood? I can read something 10 times. Some of you have done tests with me and you've heard me read questions 5 times to myself out loud. Why am I doing this? It's because I don't know how to explain it to you yet. If I can't explain the question to you using different vocabulary, I'm not doing my job. And that also means I don't fully understand the question. When we take a look at answering questions about what you've read, there's a lot of different strategies. All right, once you can explain to someone what you've read, you should be able to answer almost any question about the problem or what's being asked of you. All right, what we're going to do is actually turn our attention to a subject, and we're going to learn stuff today that actually is useful in life while learning how to read even better. Isn't that awesome? Again, I'm sure you're rolling your eyes, but in all honesty, I'm really I love science. I love this topic. If you don't know this about me, I actually am certified as an infectious disease teacher as well. I've been through a lot of certifications for it from a previous job. So I love infectious diseases. I think they're so cool. I know. That probably is a strange hobby of mine, but I still think it's awesome. All right. Take a look at this epic picture. All right, you guys are probably like, this is absolutely disgusting. This is a slow motion picture of a sneeze. Look at all of it. Oh, everywhere. All right, here's what's going to happen. I am going to not read this passage out loud. I'm going to read it silently to myself, giving you guys time to read it as well. And then the video is going to pause and we're going to talk. So I'm going to read it silently. There will be nothing in the background. I will not be talking for a minute. So start reading. Look at that giant paragraph. So here's what we're going to do. I'd like to ask you a question about it. So how do germs actually spread? We're going to take a look at that paragraph a little deeper that you just read silently to yourself. So you can touch something, direct contact. All right, you can sneeze or cough, which is indirect contact. Again, epic slow motion sneeze here in this picture. I'm sure you guys are loving it on your Tuesday and Thursday mornings. I just give you the best stuff, don't I? Right now, what we're going to do is we're going to ramp up the vocabulary. Same type of passage, but we're going to learn some different words. Why do we use different vocabulary? I don't use big words as a teacher to sound smart or pompous. Look at what I did just there. Same type of word, but one actually gives you a little bit of a different meaning. You can say something and be smart, but the word pompous actually means being smart because you're full of yourself. So using a different word can actually give you a very specific type of meaning to what you might be trying to say to people. Do all words mean the same thing? I just proved to you they don't. I can say smart or I can say pompous. They actually don't mean the same thing, even though they are similes, which means words that are similar. All right. But if I only use the word pompous, I might say, I'm not trying to use words just to sound pompous, or I'm not using large words just to sound pompous. All right, you might not know what that word have meant, but if you would have broken down the sentence, you'd be able to potentially put in the word smart because the context clues are kind of pointing in that direction. These are things that if you don't know Scrabble are great Scrabble words. I play words with friends all the time. If any of you guys want to work on your vocabulary, I will be more than willing to play with you in Words with Friends. I play almost every night. I do this because one, it's a game and I like playing games, but I also like trying to play games that are valuable with my, to my brain at least some of the time. That way I don't feel like I'm just sitting there doing nothing. So again, if you want to play Scrabble with me or Words with Friends, hit me up. I am sure to add you and play a game. All right. Here's our mission. I am going to, on the next slide, give you a paragraph. It's another paragraph about germs, but we're going to ramp up the vocabulary. All right. With our knowledge of context clues, which is trying to put in words that might make sense for them instead. I want you to actually try to find your own words that could go in there if you don't know the words that are on the screen. All right. Sorry for that little pop-up from Skype there, by the way. I'm sure you guys could see it. Thank goodness it was nothing bad. But yes, teachers also get interrupted from time to time. So your mission, again, we're going to read this passage slowly. Like I said, reading something quick is no good when you're trying to understand it. Reading something quick means you miss valuable context clues. It means you can't explain it to somebody else. Read it the way I read a question when we're taking a test together. Here are the words I want you to really try to figure out on your own. Pathogen, susceptible, and host. By the way, my little germ pictures, I thought, germs really don't look like that, but I think they're cute in children's books when they're all pictured like that, all the crazy guys. Anyway, continuing. Nonfiction reading. Here is the paragraph. All right, I am going to read it out loud. Okay, you can also hit pause on the video and read it as many times as you want to yourself before going on to the next slide, because then it's going to pop up with some questions. A method of transmission is the movement or the transmission of pathogens from a reservoir to a susceptible host. Once a pathogen has exited the reservoir, it needs a mode of transmission to the host through a portal of entry. Transmission can be direct or indirect contact or through airborne transmission. Again, hit pause at this point if you want to read this a few times to yourself. The paragraph will appear on the following slides. Pathogen. I'm going to ask you what you think the word pathogen means. Again, you can find this in the paragraph to the right. Susceptible. I'm about to ask you what susceptible means. Again, hit pause to read the paragraph to the right in order to use context clues before the question pops up. Host. Last one. I want you guys again to hit pause and read the paragraph, same paragraph to the right. And again, look for those important context clues before the question pops up and asks you another definition. Yucky mosquitoes. So here we go. We're going to review that paragraph, okay? That transmission, where I kept saying transmission to a susceptible host, all right, is something that causes something to pass from one person to another, okay? So I am transmitting a cold to you. If I sneeze on my hand and I blow a big loogie, I know, isn't that a great image? In my hand, and I reach out to shake your hand. I know, disgusting, all right? I'm giving you my germs from my hand to yours. All right, from those slow motion videos, what if I sneeze, kerchoo, right into your face? All that little particles, I know you're envisioning this, it would just splatter all over the place. It's a lovely thought, isn't it? Those pathogens, what are they? Those are the germs. All right, it's a big word for germ, but what it actually means, and this is why vocabulary is important, is it's not the good germs. These are bad germs that can hurt you. All right, a bacterium, a virus, or other microorganism that causes you to get a disease. Those things we don't want. I know some of you have had a cold this year already. You didn't feel good, did you? All right. What was a reservoir? It was a supply or source of something. So you are the person who initially had the virus. They were the reservoir. All right. They were holding that virus in. All right. However, if you got the cold, you were the susceptible person. You were likely or liable to be influenced or harmed by a particular thing. Maybe you were already a little sick, so your immune system was down. Maybe you have an illness, like if somebody has cancer, they're able to catch a lot of diseases easier. Not a good topic, but again, that's why we got to be careful around people who are sick. Or you always hear, don't get close to babies. Why? Because they are very susceptible to catching a lot of illnesses and colds and diseases because they don't have a strong immune system. Now, if you're the host, you are the initial animal or plant or in which a parasite um, or a commensal organism lives. And what that means is we could talk about this forever, but that's the first person who's kind of giving it to a lot of people. Sometimes the host isn't even sick, crazy enough. They're just holding on that virus to give to everybody else, not that they know it. So how do we use context clues, our little bookworm to the right in here? All right, you can look for words that mean the same or opposite of the word, like, oh, I think this would mean that. All right, you look around in the sentence to try to figure out, do you understand what anything else means? Can I put in a word? I forget who it was, but I was reading a history test to somebody in this classroom. And what happened was I did not understand the word I was looking at. It was a name. So I replaced it with a name I could say. All right. Again, sometimes using those techniques will allow you to focus on the question. The name wasn't important. Okay. It had nothing to do with the paragraph. So I replaced it with something that I could say easier. So again, how is this going to help with your everyday test taking? I just gave you an example. Reading that history test to a student, I realized the name didn't have any bearing on the question. So why was I tripping up on the name? Instead, I replaced it with a name I could say, John Smith. Okay? And the question became easier to understand. If you're ever taking a test, you want to make sure you're able to understand that question before answering, or else how are you actually getting a good shot at the question? You need to use those context clues to figure out those words you don't understand. You won't always have somebody there explaining the words to you. Obviously, if you were in a position where you can look up a word, you can, but sometimes definitions are just as hard to figure out. So what you want to do is use those context clues. So these are all good ways to help with taking a test. So, last thing we're going to quick learn about, hand washing. When should you do it? I actually want you to read the directions, all right, to the right and answer the questions that follow. I will not read these to you. Again, I'm going to pause for a few seconds to allow you to pause this video in order to then answer the questions that follow. Please pause the video in order to answer the question that is going to follow.
Mama, Bobo, Bobo.
Now we're going to read how to wash your hands. Again, I'm going to pause here because I want you to read this silently and answer the question that follows. So, again, make sure to pause this video in the next 5 seconds. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
One,
When we take a look, I know this screen is blank right now. What we're going to do now is answer a few questions back in Blackboard. I look forward to seeing you back in class.